In DC, we're just hoping that you listen.
Welcome, everyone, to District Divided, a DC sports podcast. This week, we are continuing our Washington Commanders off-season series. Scott Turner, offensive coordinator, is the topic today. We're going to talk about his current performance as the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders and how he's done in the past at some previous places. We're then going to get into more Dan Snyder news. AJ Perez at by AJ Perez on Twitter dropped a story in the middle of Duke UNC and the Final Four that took NFL Twitter by storm. Potentially some financial improprieties there, allegedly. We're going to get into that as well. I am Amit. That is KDot. KDot, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm great. Also tired because your boy Amit right here introduced me to Attack on Titan, and I've always kind of disrespected animes, and I haven't been able to sleep because I've just been watching it. I calculated about 29 hours worth of content in the last 4 days.
So it's a great show. Do not, for you people that are ahead of us with manga and stuff like that, please do not drop spoilers. This is not that kind of channel. All right.
No.
This is
assholes.
not
Don't
that
do
kind
that.
of channel.
Give me this invest in a fucking anime that I haven't spoiled to me. Fuck that. No, I'm finishing tonight. Well, fuck this. I got 12 episodes to go. Let's just end.
All right. Well, anyway, if you guys have any theories as well after KDot is done, feel free to. Well, don't even do that for those that haven't seen it yet. Anyway, let's
reach out to us via our personal social media platform.
Exactly. DMs. All right, cool. No spoilers on this show, but let's get into it. Scott Turner. So he's been our offensive coordinator since 2020. He's part of the Ron Rivera regime over here in Washington, alongside Jack Del Rio on the defensive coordinator side of things. And we'll talk about him next week. But this week, Scott Turner. So he has had 2 full seasons as our offensive coordinator. He finished 30th overall in 2020 with our offense and then 21st overall. So we actually made improvements on the offensive side of the ball. And that was with a full season of Taylor Heineke, who we were both, high on, but we know that he's limited and stuff like that. And now he's going to get the opportunity with Carson Wentz, who is probably the most talented, if not the second most talented, probably behind Cam Newton, quarterback that Scott Turner has ever worked with. So the first question, KDot, what are your thoughts on Scott Turner so far and how he's done here in DC?
I've had my issues with Scott, but then every time that I've had my issues with Scott, especially last year before, as far as the way the game flow and everything, I then have to check myself and then understand and realize what he's working with or what he had to work with, which kind of puts everything into perspective the proper way in Washington, right? So he takes over the Washington offense after Jay Gruden's gone, and Jay Gruden had Kevin O'Connell, the current Minnesota Vikings new head coach, as the offensive coordinator. But if you look at that team, I think we were ranked 30th or something. It was we were really low as far as the offensive rating. But then once again, that was the transition period into the whole Dwayne Haskins. They throw him out into the fire. It was a shit show. You get Ron Rivera takes over. He installs Scott Turner from, like you said, Carolina, because in Carolina it was a huge deal when Norv Turner decided he was going to go be Scott Turner's father. Goes and decides he's going to be the offensive coordinator in Carolina and brings his son there with him. And they kind of work back and forth. Norv is like, all right, I'm bowing out. I'm done. Scott takes over. And you look at just from when he's been the offensive coordinator, the one thing you can look at is that they've never had a plethora of talent at quarterback, no matter where he was and what year. Like every time that there's somebody who's like, oh, maybe we're excited to see this guy, it goes away. The first year in Carolina that he gets the shot at offensive coordinators when Cam Newton goes down, the Kyle Allen show. And look, Kyle Allen might look to us, even in the short amount of time that he played for us, like, oh, he could have been decent. He's Kyle Allen. So, I mean, that's the thing, is that you can go all the way back through his history. Anytime he's had any sort of real say on an offense, it's been mediocre at best quarterback play, and he hasn't really got an opportunity to really let that offense shine. And we know when Norv Turner offense works. We know that Air Coryell offense is something that, I am an unabashed huge fan of the old Dan Fouts San Diego teams. I am a Don Coryell diehard, baby. It's just he's never this. I think going into this season is probably the most excited you can ever be about the jury being out on what Scott Turner is really capable of doing.
Okay, fair enough. So if I'm hearing you correctly, probably too soon to tell because he hasn't had the quarterback in there that can maybe make all the throws like he's been quoted as saying in the past. So it's too soon to tell with Scott. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and I mean, it feels as though that it's like you're making excuses to somebody who's been the offensive coordinator here for now, going on 3 years. This is his 3rd year. And before that, even being the quarterbacks coach there in Carolina, knowing that he was in that same system, it's almost like you don't want to make it like, how many years do we got to wait for you to figure it out, guy? Ryan, we got to remind you, Ryan Fitzpatrick went down in week 1 last year. Taylor Heineke, we all love Taylor. We love the Shane Falco-ness that he brings to the football field. But we all know there are pure limitations in what he can do at the quarterback position from a physical standpoint. And when you need that Eric Coryell sort of offense as far as what you're doing with attacking down the field and making those quick decisions, and like if you see something open, you got to take it right now. You look at the injuries that the team sustained, it's really, really hard to do that when you got Taylor Heineke at quarterback, Curtis Samuel, who's supposed to be that release valve, is hurt. J.D. McKissick, who's also a huge release valve as far as in the screen game, is hurt. It's just he never really had the full cast of characters you could ever say. And it's not even like, hey, adjust your offense for the guy. To what? Like, what do you like? There's nothing really that can make it totally work unless you want Terry McLaurin to get hurt, which is what we saw eventually start happening when they're just throwing the ball up his way.
Yeah, you know what? It just hit me why it's called Ashburn is because they have a furnace over there and you always have to throw your plans in there and it just goes to fucking flames because every single time you think about it, right? They spent the entire offseason planning around Ryan Fitzpatrick as the guy. And within a quarter, gone, all of it. And all of a sudden it's Taylor Heineke. In 2020, he was brought in to help Dwayne Haskins. And Dwayne, as people know, and for those of you that are still batting, I can't imagine there are any left. But if you are, the guy just has a work ethic problem. Like, it's quite clear. Like, even when he went to Pittsburgh, there were reporters being like, why is he on his phone in pregame? You know, so like there's something with Dwayne that just, it isn't working right now. Right. So he has Dwayne Haskins over there. Then all of a sudden he's with Kyle Allen. Then all of a sudden it's Alex Smith. And then it's Taylor Heineke. So I think it's too soon to tell. Sounds like you would think it's too soon to tell. Some of the notable quarterbacks, just going back a little bit, as KDot alluded to and actually straight up said, Norv Turner, who used to be the head coach over here, is a famous offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, where he won a couple Super Bowls and then became the head coach over here in Washington, then known as the Redskins. Scott Turner is his son, and they have been not quite attached at the hip like you may see with other father-son combos, but you can also see that they do have certain similarities to one another in their offensive styles. Scott Turner has worked with a number of NFL quarterbacks. He's worked with Cam Newton. He's worked with Teddy Bridgewater before the horrible ACL injury that sort of, you know, affects who Teddy Bridgewater is today. Kyle Allen, Will Greer, you name it. He's been around the league forever, including
Jason Campbell.
There you go. So he has been around the pro game forever. And because it's too soon to tell, and because Carson Wentz is now probably talented or second most talented, depending on where you fall on the Cam Carson thing, I'm very excited to see what happens here. And also the last 4 games he spent, KDot, as interim offensive coordinator after Ron Rivera got fired from Carolina, guess who got a ton of touches out of the backfield? It was Curtis Samuel, right? So all of a sudden you see the differences in how Curtis is being used. Curtis has 4.3 speed. Before Scott Turner was the offensive coordinator, they were using him to stretch the defense, just run go routes and create space for everybody else. Well, all of a sudden he's being used as that Swiss Army knife. Antonio Gibson was a pick months in the making. He fell in love with him at the Senior Bowl. He was already drawing up plays for him. So I'm excited to see a healthy Curtis Samuel with a healthy Antonio Gibson, with a Carson Wentz at quarterback, to see, hey, what are the ideas in your head, Scott? And can you make them a reality? Do you feel that he has the necessary tools this year, KDot, to make some of those ideas a reality now with Carson at QB, and imagine a healthy Curtis Samuel as well?
Yeah, we've talked about it here on this. There are no excuses this year.
Correct. We agree.
You have to be better than you were last year. And the thing is that you have to be better than you were last year, even if Carson Wentz was the God forbid go down week 1, like Ryan Fitzpatrick did, because you're going to have a second year Taylor Heineke, and you had better figured out a way to utilize his talents after having him for an entire season to get the job done. The only thing with Taylor, I think early this year, was that they were trying to keep the reins on him, and trying to keep him away from the mistakes, but that takes away what makes Taylor special, which is that he just makes stuff happen, which doesn't fit into your scheme necessarily as much as he just wills things into being or into existence. It won't work every week at all, right? But the thought process that you could go through the injuries that team had on offense last year, and still manage to even get 21st ranking as far as yards on offense, to me is a fairly good feat. And there were certain games last year you could absolutely say that he called great ones. Like I said, the biggest thing that I ever had with him was not getting Terry McLaurin the ball in space and not understanding where it is the line with Taylor Heineke was. Coming into this year, I mean, if you have enough depth at these positions, which you should this year, and that's another thing, is like you start getting to a point where even if you look at an organization, if they're getting injuries at the level at which we seem to do every year, you got to kind of look, there's something going on with the way that we're treating our guys, or it's the field, or it's something, right? Yeah, you got to look for the common denominator there. And if it's us, then it's us, and we got to figure that out. So there's no excuses. And I think this year with Carson Wentz, who's a guy who can make all the throws, whether or not he's intelligent enough sometimes, or his decision-making at times makes it so that there's like, hey, you didn't need to do that one, bud. Yeah, I think this should be a huge litmus test for what it is that Scott Turner can do. And I know Norv Turner's offense works. And the one thing I will say, as far as what you were mentioning as far as the Norv Turner thing, I did want to mention one thing.
Sure.
When we talk about coaches and everything in the NFL, and we talk about the NFL as a whole, especially when you're on the heels like the Brian Flores lawsuit and what we're talking about as far as the Rooney Rule and things like that. I know that nepotism ends up being a thing that gets brought up a lot, but I will tell you this: when it comes to football, yeah, I think there's some instinctive stuff that's there, but that feels like more of me watching Steve Sable as a kid with the classical music playing and the frozen tundra, right? But it's concepts. They're actually teachable things. And if you have a dad and a son who enjoy the game of football, you're not going to learn any better than being around your pops 24 hours a day.
Right.
Those concepts and stuff, which is why you see a lot of times the nepotism kind of works. You look at, even if sometimes the personality thing could be the thing that gets in the way, right? But if you look at like Buddy Ryan, no one's saying Rob Ryan and Rex Ryan weren't bad coaches.
Right.
I mean, maybe not great head coaches, but they had great schemes at certain particular points, and they fucking
certainly.
Right. So I think Norv Turner to Scott Turner is sort of the same thing. I'm a huge fan of the Air Coryell offense if you've got the right talent, and the amount of speed that we have on that field, with a J.D. McKissick coming back, with an Antonio Gibson, all guys can catch the ball out of the backfield. With a Terry McLaurin, if you have a threat on the other side of the field, you don't have to have him run go routes all the time. This could be really, really scary. It's just, can Carson pick it up? And one last thing I'll say about the Air Coryell offense, unlike a lot of systems that we've had in Washington, especially going from Shanahan to Gruden, that West Coast offense is a complicated offense. As far as terminology, the Air Coryell offense is extremely simple terminology-wise. It's there are certain concepts you got to kind of learn, and that'll take time to get into. But as far as calling the plays, audibling the plays, actually what it takes to learn and to know the play and to be able to implement and call plays is extremely easy. Not extremely easy. Easier than most offenses in the league as far as the learning curve for a quarterback, which is what makes me think that like Carson Wentz, there should be no excuses this year as far as Carson Wentz. He should be able to hit the ground running.
Yeah. And one more example of father-son duo. How about Mike and Kyle? Both here as well.
Yep.
And Kyle, I mean, very recently in a Super Bowl. So nepotism is not always a bad thing. And in this scenario, like KDot's talking about, Scott Turner clearly loves football, has been around his dad the whole time, and has made a name for himself as well. And so I'm also very curious to see what happens. Now, since you mentioned that there are no excuses, and we are in total agreement there, right? There are no excuses this year. And he has been quoted as saying, hey, I need a guy that can make all the throws, right? Scott Turner himself, UNLV QB, he didn't really play. He only, I think, had like 5 pass attempts or something like that. But he's 6'3", he was 200 at the time. Like, he probably has a bias towards the bigger QBs, right? I mean, Taylor Heineke is listed at 6'1". Does anyone believe that? I mean, it's just one of those things where it's just like, okay, this may be some sort of bias that he has against, these smaller QBs, unless they have that rocket arm, right? So Scott, to me, has everything in place, but what if Carson gets hurt? Do you think that they spend a first or second round pick, or maybe even a third? Well, we don't have that, first or second this year on, it could be let's go with Desmond Ridder, because he seems to be the biggest one, the most pro-ready rumored by many folks in the media and stuff like that. Do you think it makes sense to grab a guy like that in case Carson goes down, so that you can continue with can make all the throws? And as you had mentioned, the offense has simplified terms in it.
I can make sense of it. I mean, I think last week I was like, even at pick 11, not pick 11, but if
47,
I wouldn't be surprised if we did get a quarterback, just because maybe there's a guy that they like. I wouldn't necessarily get that guy because I'm expecting or thinking it as a backup to Carson and him getting hurt.
But wouldn't that represent growth, right? Like, in a certain respect, because let's say we go back to Taylor and there hasn't been enough, or in Scott's mind, he goes, look, there is only so much I can do. Absolute maximum. If we were thinking about total offensive yards, 20th. No.
Okay. Look, what do we all say about Taylor Heineke? He could be one of the best backups in the league.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why you have him. Like that to me is growth in the sense of Washington, in the sense of like having somebody, like, I won't want to just throw anybody out there. Not to mention, like, your starting quarterback goes down, and depending on how it looked before he went down, I don't like the idea of throwing the young guy into the fire just to see, all right, let's see what happens with it. Like, there would be, like, even if they were to get a Desmond Ridder, I'd still be of the idea to start Taylor Heineke if Carson Wentz went down. Because, because let's look at it. Like, you look at the team before the COVID deal, and then Garrett Gilbert having to make the start. We went on that run against Tampa Bay and what was it, Carolina, Cam Newton Panthers. And we're looking primed to go and make that playoff run.
Beat them too.
So I'm saying that, like, with the only thing I'd look for Scott is growth when it comes to Taylor, in the sense of knowing how to call a game better than he did week 2 or week 3 last year. That to me is what I want to see growth there from Scott Turner, not I got to cast off Taylor, because you got to do the same thing as a coach, right? Like, you need somebody who works in your system, but you need to have flexibility in what it is you have depending on the talent you got. And I think that we've seen him do that the last 2 years for us with what we've gotten out of quarterback position. I would just say that, like, if things went bad again and Carson went down, God forbid, you'd have a better game plan. Right.
He's got to be better with Taylor. That's the growth we're talking about over here.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Because he's look, Scott Turner's only been an offense coordinator 3 years. And
well, 2 and a quarter. Right.
2 and a quarter. Right. Yeah, my bad. We're going in.
Interim.
Exactly. Right. This is still very early in his career. And once again, he has not had the talent at the quarterback position that would foster anybody thinking you'd have success. I don't care who you are as an offensive coordinator. If you had to go trot out the corpse of Alex Smith, and what Taylor Heineke, Kyle Allen for the little bit of time,
Dwayne,
Garrett Gilbert,
at the beginning,
Dwayne Haskins.
My God, this list is insane.
And it's been 2 years and a quarter. Wow. So it's like that. Like, can you really say that you're properly assessing somebody's offensive scheme with that cast of characters?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. So I guess we will see with the talent that he has around him. And I think that also makes sense in terms of using an early round pick on a QB. Hey, we traded for Carson. The cap hit at 28 million. Yeah, it hamstrung us a little bit this year, but it gets a bit easier next year and the year after. You can always get out, stuff like that. And Scott Turner was extended an additional 2 years beyond this season. So after the trade with Indianapolis to get Carson Wentz over here, Scott Turner did receive an extension through the 2024 season. So that represents a level of faith that they have in him. I also think that lends itself to the idea that Ron Rivera should be fine regardless of how this season goes. Honestly, I think Dan is taking the approach. Let's be real. He's still in charge. I know it's alluding to the next segment a bit, but I think Dan knows that he needs to be patient here more than ever with Ron Rivera, because Ron's a good coach, as we talked about last week. And if he wants Scott, he wants Scott. It's as simple as that. So we're going to see how that goes. Final question then, pick 11. Are you saying screw it? Let's go with one of these wide receivers. These Ohio State wide receivers are being heavily rumored, specifically Chris Olave.
Chris Olave, I'm in love with, honestly. Yeah. Like I so want it to happen. I'm not one of those guys. Well, we got enough wide receivers. De'Ami Brown. No, fuck that, man. Bring him in. We get the 3 Ohio State boys here on the same off. Come on, man. I'm all about it, because that's a sort of atmosphere in which they're going to push each other to get better. And you already know Olave looks up to Terry McLaurin. It's that to me would make a lot of sense. I think also, depending on what we end up doing with the Landon Collins situation, I know June 1st is that deadline, and we're all kind of circling around. Kyle Hamilton ends up being, if he's there at 11, something that looks extremely interesting on that defense. Mm-hmm. Just because his ball hawking ability. Just thinking of him, Cam Curl, but with Bob McCain, Cam Curl, I think we're still trying to figure out what it is that secondary looks like by the end of it.
I was just about to ask you about that. Let's say they're both on the board at 11 and you have it. And let's say, for the sake of this hypothetical, no trade offers for it. You have to pick somebody. Mm-hmm. Pick 11, Chris Olave, Kyle Hamilton. Who's your pick?
I go Olave.
Okay. I'd go Hamilton. But I get it. I'd be happy with either one. But yeah.
Same here. And then look, no, you're not going to do that. I'm not going to. When the other guy ends up being a Pro Bowler as a rookie, be pissed.
That's a given. I think you know that. I think the viewers know that. I think everyone knows. If we get Olave, Hamilton's the stud. If we get Hamilton, Olave's the stud. That's just sort of how it works, right? That's just sports in general over here.
I will say, I think Olave's speed in this offense with Carson, this could be a really scary offense on paper. The speed would be blistering. And
I just wanted to very quickly say, the sub rankings within 2020 and 2021 for the Washington Commanders, in the 20s for pass offense. So if you get Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Chris Olave, with Carson Wentz and the offensive line playing the way it did last season and the season before.
Logan Thomas back.
Please continue, KDot.
John Bates looks good.
Salivating. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like, and once again, we want to leave it so that Scott Turner has every opportunity possible to implement this offense, implement it to the best of his abilities, right? You do that, you give him the wide receiver, you got Carson Wentz. There's a situation where you end up, as a fan, finally, we can look at the team and be like, there are no excuses, guys. Go do it. And right. If they don't get it done, unleash hell. if they don't. But I think that would be really, really interesting. We know our defense is capable. We know our defense has holes, but I think unless we're looking at somebody who really can slot in and is a great linebacker, or what's our boy's name? Cole Holcomb can muster up Pro Bowl style ability from the middle linebacker position, and Jamin Davis can play on the outside and do coverage well. And I don't know if that's going to be the case yet, right? So we spent a lot on that defense, and I want us to. We should have enough to go get it done. Chase coming back, just go do it, guys. Also, Ryan Kerrigan's a free agent, I think. Still, bring him back home.
Bring him back. Bring him home. Bring him home.
No, just The only thing on the offense that I actually want to see from Scott Turner and everything actually moving in the right direction. I'm starting to get a little annoyed with Antonio Gibson, but as I did throughout the rest of the season. But I just that offense could be scary. I mean, anybody can touch the football. Anybody can catch it. You got everybody can catch the football out of that's fucking nuts.
The offensive talent level, even right now, is surprisingly good. I think it's slept on by a number of people. Final question before we move on to Dan Talk. Terry McLaurin, a lot of people are freaking out about his status, right? He's entering the final year of his rookie deal. Do you think a deal gets done this offseason? Yes or no? And if yes, When? If no, do we trade him or do we ride it out?
I think it gets done. I think it's going to make fans squirm because it won't get done until much later on in the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're probably looking like July-ish. Maybe you hear the deal come out. Like after we figure out what happened with the Landon Collins situation, we're going to clear that from the cap. What's going to happen as far as that shit goes? After I can see them getting that done at that point. Once again, I've said this on another podcast. I don't know if I've said it on this one. Fuck you, Jacksonville Jaguars, for breaking the wide receiver market. You fucking dumbasses.
All the teams are saying that, by the way. That spurred how many trades? I mean, Devontae moves, Tyreek moves, like everyone.
All because of Christian Kirk and
Stephon got a new deal. Like, I mean,
so, but I will say this as far as the Terry McLaurin thing, and I'm not going to apologize for this. And I've already seen some fans try to make sense of it. And it makes me feel the same way that I feel when people are trying to defend Dan Snyder. If this team does not re-sign Terry McLaurin, it is one of the biggest travesties in the history of this organization.
We may just shut this podcast down, honestly, at that point.
I'd be cool with it.
What's the point if they're not going to re-sign Terry? I am in full agreement with you. I believe a deal gets done with Terry. If you looked at Jonathan Allen's deal, it happened last year around July 26th. So there is time. I think Terry wants to stay. He has to stay. And I think the organization, as deaf as it can be sometimes, knows, hey, we need to keep this guy here. Even they know that. Why don't we go ahead and jump into the Dan Snyder stuff? Because he can't seem to run away from all these problems. Things are popping up like it's whack-a-mole. They take care of one thing and they haven't even done that. But then a new thing pops up. So they've got a whole bunch of things coming up. And the latest seems to be about financial improprieties. So AJ Perez, a reporter, had come out on Saturday night, again, in the middle of Duke UNC, or just before, I can't remember the exact timestamp on it, and said, hey, the Congressional Oversight and Reform Committee is looking into the possibility that 2 books are being run over at the Washington Commanders. And of course, who is at the top? Dan Snyder. Why would 2 books be run? Well, this is all allegedly. Nothing's been proven yet, but there's a thought that we were fudging the numbers on ticket sales, which of course your home figures, you keep 60%, the other 40% goes to the NFL, is distributed amongst the other 31 owners. Now, our ticket sales stink. So I have no idea why he would need to keep that money and fudge those numbers. So that part is a bit strange to me. I don't really know what's going on there. But KDot, what do you make of the story? Do you think there's any smoke or fire here? Or do you think it's just sort of like you know what? People are just sort of grasping right now.
So the guy who we know is the one that said there was something was Jason Friedman, former employee
24 years
of Washington, 24 years in the building. I've heard a lot of good things about Jason. I've also heard a lot of things that this guy was in the organization for 24 years. So, so there's a little, look, we talked about, I think we mentioned it briefly last week. At least I'm getting all my podcasts blurred. I'm sorry. Even though this is now
just in general, people. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I will say this is now the Big Daddy podcast as far as we're looking at the numbers. You guys we've been outperforming what it is we've been doing on ASS, but whatever, I relent. And especially the comment game. God, keep commenting. Even when you're saying some stupid shit, just keep commenting.
No manga spoilers though. Yeah, please.
Yeah, stop that.
Yeah.
But all right, so this would be like every time I think about it, I'm like, he's not that stupid. And you're like, oh no, he could be that stupid. This would be the beginning of the end of Snyder if it was seen that he was taking money away from the league. I mean, I still think it would come down to a Cold War sort of thing where I know they would have him pay back everything everything he owed if he owed the rest of the team's money. And then from there, they probably would have him keep it, or they might penalize us, take away draft picks. I don't know. But I also go back to I don't ever want it to be in a place where I'm defending Dan Snyder, but I just want to make the most sense of this particular situation. I think it would be extremely hard for him to cook the books when it comes to this. Now, I did hear that there's a little bit of I'm hearing a lot of different things as far as what it took for Dan to take full ownership of the team when they had to go because he didn't have the full cash to go and do it. So there's like a forget the terminology or whatever, but there was like some loan that he had to basically get approved of to be able to take over 100% full ownership of the team.
A debt something that was
a debt something, right. Because you don't have that much liquid fucking cash to just make the transaction, but I know that the league looks over the books. I also know the league is notorious for auditing teams, and I know that I believe I've heard Washington has been audited before by the league. If there's one thing we know the league cares about is the fucking money. And also the league is going to have things in place where they realize billionaires are going to try to fuck other billionaires out of money. It's just what it is. And I'll even go as far like the same thing you were just saying, you were alluding to at the end of the intro of this. I was talking to my buddy Brendan, who I do all the time. And my thing was that when I was first hearing, I'm like, I actually kind of think it would go the other way. Like knowing what he's done as far as the season ticket waiting list and everything, did he... Is there? Do we?
We're actually giving more money under the impression that
is Dan embellishing the numbers? Because like when I heard there was second, I'm like, nah. There's no way there's a more empty stadium in the league than what it is we got right here.
Paying a higher subscription to stay owner because if they knew the real numbers, there's no way.
You're not making us any money, Dan. What's the point of you doing this? Like, I thought about I'm like, is there a way that the numbers just were fucked up, but when they actually had to like, Dan was giving us more than he needed to just keep the. You come to find out half the tickets sold each week were Dan himself, like just trying to get through some shell company. It's just some fucking consulting firm bought up all the goddamn box seats. Who fucking wants box seats at FedEx? I'm just saying. Look, I'm saying there's got to be some sort of money laundering or something happening when it comes to box seats at FedEx. Who the fuck has box seats at FedEx right now?
Oh my God, that is incredible. I just want to say, I was going to mention Stephanie Weisenberger, who's a sports and IP attorney. She had a fantastic thread on how she felt financial impropriety once she had heard AJ Perez's, story, or read it rather, that she was like, wait a minute, this seems like there may be something going on, because I remembered a few documents that I had seen in the past related to the three minority owners who were looking to sell at a certain time. And it turns out that, according to her, and it's a fantastic thread, you can follow her at @sweisenberger_. I'll put that in the description because you're just not going to know how to spell that intuitively. But she was talking about, hey, Dan was given the opportunity to make them an offer that would have been equivalent to what they were getting from a different party, right? And the advantage of Dan doing it is that the books never had to open up. Okay. Dan blocked the sale to the other. He used a right of first refusal, which I'm not even sure he had. I need to double check, but he exercised it, and then actually offered less. And then they get into this sort of scuffle of like, hey, why the heck did you offer less? You know what would happen. Like the attorney that representing the three, or the lawyer representing the three minority owners, said, hey, if you want to get into a shitstorm, we can certainly do that regarding financial. So there does seem to be some smoke. I find it hard to believe that it would be over the ticket sale numbers, just because it doesn't make up a large piece of the pie at all. It would almost be better to just admit, hey, I can't, we're not selling a whole lot, but here it is. I'm more likely to agree with what you just said, that maybe somehow he's actually embellished the numbers. Stephanie Weisenberger did just retweet, and I wanted to say this from AJ Perez. By AJ Perez one more time on Twitter. New documents from the NFL are flowing into the House Oversight Committee related to the Washington Commanders. Sources tell, I believe it's Front Office Sports at FOS, the committee now has 210,000 pages, including a new cache from Beth Wilkinson's investigation. So that is a continuing story. 210,000 pages could be the same page 210,000 times. You'd never know how it goes, but it seems
you watch Succession?
I do.
It's when Logan just floods the government with papers so that it's lost.
I immediately thought of your okay, so we've seen too much. It's clearly all this come from this.
It's like just drowning in paperwork. Look, bottom line on this, and here, Washington fans will want to defend every fucking thing because we have such bad Stockholm syndrome. They're willing to take a bullet for an organization. Don't give a shit. Bring it on, baby. congressional investigation here, oversights, fucking do everything. Turn over all of it. I want to know his parking ticket situation. Hey, what happened to that nanny? Bring her back into the ship. Like,
why not?
Everything. Why? Look, he's a piece of shit. We all know he's a piece of shit. Like, it goes beyond he's a bad owner. Come on, guys. We know he's not a good dude.
We want this to be true, KDot and I.
Right.
Like, I know it sounds bad. We are literally rooting for the downfall of a single individual because we feel he's holding our football team back. That's where we're at. Okay.
It goes a little beyond that. I do think, like,
go ahead.
I'm not going to say that. What I will say, I can't say that either.
0-2. Ball 1-2.
There's a certain way to run. There's a certain way to run an organization. There's a certain way to run a business. You can do it in a respectful manner. Dan Snyder does not carry himself in any sort of respectful or dignified way. And that to me is something where I do not like the idea of the football team that is representing my hometown that has brought so much pride to people throughout our entire lives and generationally before us, to see that it has come to this point where you have a team and organization ran the way it is, that has a reputation it has, and well warranted because of the head guy in charge, makes me know that there are a lot of nefarious things happening. And look, this goes even before I touch the sexual harassment deal.
We haven't even mentioned that today.
And the moment that I even get into that is the moment that I say, the fact is, this is the facts. We know he gets involved in anything he wants to get involved in. We know he has eyes and ears over the entire organization. If 10% of what was happening or what has been reported has happened in that organization, even if he himself was not directly doing it, he provided cover for a lot of these guys and the atmosphere for a lot of these guys to be able to do this stuff. That alone speaks volumes, and we have to keep it there. And that's the thing, is you don't have to go that deep in order to figure out that he's a piece of shit. And the every layer you peel back of that onion, the more you start seeing there are absolutely no reasons why we should ever be rooting for this guy or wanting him to be a part of an organization or team that we care about.
Right. I think it was incredibly well said. And just to show, obviously I was just, being sarcastic and minimizing what I was talking about. Ultimately, yes, it does affect our football team, but this dude is just a bad dude. You can tell from all the stuff that's coming out from they've really, really good reputations behind some of these authors, these writers, these Twitter accounts, stuff like that are reporting facts for you on what this guy has done, what this guy has overseen, whether he's aware or not. It's just bad leadership. It's bad form. And he keeps getting away with stuff, which is just not like, if you think about it, Calvin Ridley was out for the season with mental health issues. He bets on the Falcons. That in and of itself is just stupid, but he bets on his own team. He loses some money. Now he's suspended for the whole year. Right. Josh Gordon smoked some weed. He's out for a season, 2 seasons. Then all of a sudden he's like banned. You see some of the decisions the NFL makes. The Ray Rice thing, they suspended him a little bit. They saw the video, then it comes out, then they go, "You're right. Actually, you got us. We got to suspend him the whole time." It's just messed up. At the end of the day, it's just messed up, and we're just looking for some justice here when it comes to this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Sure.
Well, so again, it's an evolving story. Any final thoughts on this episode, KDot, before we wrap it up?
Draft time, man. And just want to make sure I don't fall too in love with any one particular player like I did with Michael Parsons last year, and then he fucking went.
But you were right. That dude is a stud.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate he went to Dallas. Yeah, fuck him.
But fuck him and his great personality and his amazing way of talking. It's okay. And his charisma and his scariness. Yeah. Oh God, it would be so terrible to see him next to Chase Young in the first. God damn you!
I know.
I hate the draft. I fucking hate the draft. I hate the NFL draft. I hate it.
Oh man. Well, anyway, I guess that's gonna wrap it up. Honestly, this is District Divided, a DC sports podcast. Thank you guys for listening. I am Amit. That is KDot. Next week, probably a much more contentious topic and episode, defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio. While we have Scott Turner, who has some experience bouncing around the league, Jack Del Rio has been a head coach. He's been a defensive coordinator, and he's got a lot of talent that underperformed last season. So we're going to talk about that.
And we're going to talk about his politics.
That too. So, could you imagine? But that lot to talk about with Jack Del Rio. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next week. Until then, take it easy.